This is Retire Hour.
Well, welcome into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that's retirement. And there's a lot of things changing right now. And I think another word to probably use would be there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. And we're not just a financial advisory show. We've also got tax, estate planning. We're going to have some long-term care discussions second half of the show, about said this afternoon, not this afternoon, but second half of the show here with Kimberly Sixkiller. And of course, we've got a new advisor, or well, I guess not new advisor, but the first time he'll be on the air. We've got Doug Miller, and then we've got a treat. We've got Jonathan McCoy down from Kansas City here as well. But I'm your host, Matt Goolsby, and I want to share with you a story this week about a couple, let's call them Mike and Tina to protect their identity. Now, Mike, he came to us because a current client of ours referred him. And honestly, to me, it was just in time. You see, Mike had been focusing on his own retirement. He and Tina wanted to make sure they weren't missing anything in their plan as they approached this next chapter of their lives. And of course, we took them through our Core 4 report process. That's where we look at retirement income, your estate plan, healthcare, and of course, the taxes, all coordinated together. And you know, as we were walking through their plan, something was jumping out at me. I'd talked to him about, him and Tina, his wife, about if their parents were still alive. And the only parent that they had still alive was his father. And when we were talking about that, it wasn't just the gaps in Mike's retirement, it was going on in his father's situation. So Mike's dad, he's 84 years old, and he owns a good deal of land. It's called about 100 acres. Now that land, it's not only valuable, it's part of their family's legacy. But here's the problem. His dad had no estate plan, nothing in writing, no trust, no clear instructions. And if something were to happen, the state, like Kansas or Missouri, not the family, would decide how things get divided. Now, even though Mike is his only biological son, he has a step sibling. And without this estate plan, it was just going to open a whole can of worms. And here's the most part people don't realize. Estate planning attorneys here at Eidelman Law Firm, they often tell me that probate can cost anywhere from 3 to 6% of the value of the asset that has to be taken through probate. So on 100 acres of land, that could easily be $30,000 to $60,000 just wasted, simply because there wasn't a proper estate plan in place. Can you imagine that? After a lifetime of working that land, the family could be torn apart, not just because of the money necessarily, but because there was no plan in place. So, now Mike, he'd told me something that really struck me. He said, Matt, I've been trying to talk to my dad about this for years. He just hasn't wanted to deal with it. And that is not uncommon. A lot of families, they avoid these conversations because, let's face it, they're tough. Nobody really wants to think about their own mortality. But the important thing here is avoiding it doesn't make the problem go away. In fact, it can make the consequences way worse later. I've never seen anyone pay $30,000 to $60,000 for an estate plan, so let me tell you that. So after step 2 of our process, I sent Mike home with a simple estate planning questionnaire from our partners over at Eidelman Law Firm. I said, take this, sit down with your dad, walk through it, just start the conversation. And you know what happened? Between step 2 and step 3 of our process, Mike had the time to sit down with his father, and for the first time, his dad had agreed to move forward. And in fact, he has an appointment with one of our estate planning attorneys next week to come in with Mike, his son, and have this process get underway. That's huge relief. Because instead of this land being tied up in probate and wasting a bunch of money in probate, we're sparking conflict or being split up maybe in ways the father never wanted or intended. Now, Mike and his father, they can make sure it's handled the right way. Now, you might be listening to this and thinking, well, that's just one family story, but I want you to hear the lesson here. It's not just about retirement accounts or investments or tax strategies. Your retirement plan, it's incomplete if you don't address the estate plan component. And without a plan, don't worry, I say that jokingly, almost sarcastically, tongue-in-cheek, the state in which you have your stuff, whether that's Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Florida, wherever, they have an order that they'll divvy it up for you. And I can make a safe bet here. I'd bet it might not be the plan you want exactly. So Mike and Tina, they told me how grateful they were, not just that we were helping them with their retirement, but also that we'd helped their dad. Because the truth is, his dad didn't fully realize what the consequences could have been. He thought, oh, well, things will just maybe work out. But things just don't work out. And in fact, when it comes time for estate planning, it can go terribly wrong. Things only work out if you plan for them. I talk about this in our estate planning classes all the time. Estate planning, it's planning for the what if. And that's exactly what we're here for, to help families uncover these gaps, address them, and give them peace of mind, not just for you, but also the people you love. So let me ask you, have you had that conversation? Do you know what would happen to your family's assets, whether it's land, accounts, your house, your retirement accounts, whatever, if something happened to you tomorrow? Because the reality is probate alone, like I mentioned, can eat up 3 to 6% of your estate, and maybe even more. Money that could have gone to your loved ones, not some law firm having to haggle it out in probate court. But don't wait until it's too late. Pick up the phone now and schedule that 15-minute introductory call with us, and you can do that by calling 833-44-CORE4. That's 833-442-6734. Or you can visit our website at retirementhelp.com. That first step, that 15-minute introductory call, you schedule that and we just get an idea, just basically what you need to go through here, almost like a triage. And we'll take you through our Core 4 report process if it really warrants it and help you see, just like Mike and Tina, where the gaps are. And if you don't need an estate plan, we'll help get you connected to the right professionals who can make sure your wishes are honored and addressed and your family is taken care of. Well, we've got, again, Doug Miller here coming back after the break, his radio debut, and then, of course, Jonathan McCoy. We got a lot more here in store for the rest of this show. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back with more right after this. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on more than just the investments. And we've got Doug Miller here. This is your radio debut.
It is indeed.
Thanks for fixing your hair today.
No problem. Spent plenty of time on that.
You've got a story this week about, we're going to call them Jeannie and Fred, right?
Yes.
Tell me what's going on in Jeannie and Fred's story.
Well, Jeannie and Fred they want to retire soon. They're early 60s, and they just don't know. They're just kind of lost. They came in, you can see the tension in their shoulders. They're kind of wringing their hands. They're like, we don't know what to do about retirement. And so I was like, okay, have you ever spoken to a financial professional of any kind? And they're like, well, we speak to our tax preparer. I'm like, okay.
That's kind of a financial professional.
It's financial, yeah.
It's in the neighborhood.
Yeah. And the preparer is just like looking at January 1 to December 31st. They're not they're not looking at the big picture. But one of the things I also say, do you know how much, a basic problem, do you know how much money you need? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, do you know how much money you're spending? How much you have a mortgage, you have rent? And they're like, oh yeah, we do. But it's all, they're used to a salary. They just kind of pay it. They've never done the math.
Yeah, we see that a lot. I mean, I'll ask people, what are you going to need in retirement? And you need to know how much you're going to need to run a household. And then you look at Social Security, right?
Yep.
Take a look at what that's going to be. And then you kind of figure out what that income gap is. And then hopefully they have assets and they can supplement their Social Security. Did they know what their Social Security benefits were going to be?
Not at the time I met them. They have since gone to look at them.
Oh, good.
So I did suggest that. I was like, have you looked at them? And they were just, I don't know. It's kind of the deer in headlights. They weren't really sure what to do. Once they had a kind of a process, they were much more confident in the way they were going. They were more relaxed, and it's not obviously the final solution, but that's getting them to the right stage. I wanted them to feel relaxed, that they had enough income to manage their subsistence, their food and shelter, the basic things, and then we'll get onto the fun things afterwards. But just wanted to cover those things.
Danny, one of the advisors around here, he'll call them, what do you need for your paycheck to cover the expenses, and then what would you like for your play checks? Does
Exactly. Yes.
So did you help them get to their budget and figure out what they're going to need to run their household on a monthly basis in retirement?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a little, and I always have it at the back in the room, little sheet that has some expenses, and it's not homework. It's just to give them a basic idea. So they went on field, and they came back when I spoke to them next. They were a lot more relaxed because they realized that even between some of the assets, the pension, the Social Security, they were in a good place for, they had their food and shelter covered.
They knew where their income was going to be coming from, and that made them, I'm sure, feel a lot better. And I don't know about you, but as humans, if there's an unknown out there, we can really not exacerbate, but maybe enlarge that problem. Maybe the unknown is scary. And if they didn't have any of these ideas and they had more questions than they had answers, you helped them arrive at the answers, but you didn't tell them that. You helped walk them through that.
Well, absolutely. It was just trying to point them in the right direction so that they could start to help themselves and get to square one, as you said, Danny's thing. So I kind of call them wants and needs. So
Sure, yeah.
You need shelter, you need food, and then you want to take the vacation. You may want to go to Hawaii or Alaska or wherever you want to go, or go to see Europe. But that's first, you need to make sure you got food and shelter.
And so this tax person that was helping them do their taxes every year, I don't know, and we'll find out here. I'm going to ask you, but most of the time I find tax preparers don't do any kind of tax planning. And so no one really gets the tax plan to see if your withholdings are right. How can the changes from this one big, beautiful bill impact you? Was their tax preparer helping them with any tax planning, or just filling in the numbers after the fact?
No, I think the tax planner was just, preparer was just filling in the numbers after the event. So I think there had been a time earlier where they'd taken some money from the 401k. And so the tax planner tax preparer had said, okay, you have a 10% penalty in this. But he didn't, say, and it wasn't his job. He's preparing January 1, December 31st.
He's recording history.
Exactly.
There's not many levers, as
that's
Joshua,
a great way to put it.
As
Yeah.
Joshua will say, he can pull once the end of the year rolls around. And yeah, I mean, that's not my term. That's Joshua. So, I got to give credit where credit's due there. But so how did you leave it with him? Have they now? Are they working with you? Or they got clarity now? They're figuring things out, feeling better, like you said.
Yeah, we're working. I'm working with them. We found out as you've mentioned earlier, their kind of risk tolerances, how they would feel. And another thing I always say is that, quality of sleep never shows up on a spreadsheet. If you're stressed that your money may or may not be safe and you're not sleeping, well, then it's not the right plan for you. So we've moved on from, they're now very comfortable with, okay, they've got subsistence, they've got the necessary things under control, and that they're going to be provided for.
So to recap this is we're going to call them Jeannie and Fred. They came in. Did they go to one of our classes, or they see us on TV? How'd they learn about us? Do you remember off the top of your head?
It was, I believe, a class. They came in through one of the classes, and they'd been to a couple before, but I'm not sure that they had how much they'd taken away, because they were still they realized they needed to do something, but as you mentioned, the human ability to ignore a problem is very powerful.
It is.
So they'd ignored it until there was a point where I presume the little voice in the back of their head said, okay, we really need to do something. And they finally showed up because they'd been to some meetings. They had been to more than one seminar.
And that's not uncommon. People will attend our classes. We teach a lot of topics, whether it's estate planning, taxes and retirement, Social Security, Medicare. There's a lot of different topics we'll go teach. And I'm glad people come out and attend those to get education. But it seems like the education wasn't enough for them. They needed to know about their situation, and that's when it was right for them. They came in and had a chat with us.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. They were getting educated, but there was also the clock ticking down in the back of their heads that was saying, okay, time only moves forward.
Well, that's and so if you guys are listening out there and you're thinking to yourself, man, yeah, I don't know some of these own questions. I don't know where our income's going to come from. I don't know what our Social Security is. I don't know what our expenses are. Reach out and schedule a 15-minute call with us. You can do that by calling 833-44-CORE4, or that's 833-442-26734, or go on over to that website at retirementhelp.com. And Doug, I know our audience is curious. That accent, is it Texas?
It's a very small community. We didn't get out much. But the accent you're hearing is from London. I grew up in London.
But you were born here.
I was actually born in Chicago, yes.
Okay, I don't want any ICE Asians coming in and yanking you out.
Oh, absolutely. As they say, someone once said, no short story ends in Wichita. So call in. I'll be happy to tell you about it.
Again, schedule that 15-minute call by calling 833-44-CORE4, or hop on over to our website at retirementhelp.com. Well, stay tuned. We've got a rare treat. Jonathan McCoy has come down from Kansas City, and he's going to be joining us in studio right after this break. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Retire Hour. You know, I've been a financial advisor almost 21 years now, and I can tell you, oftentimes people will come up to me, especially if they know what we do for a living, and they'll say, is $1 million enough to retire? Or, you know, is $500,000, what? And they'll ask me, and we've got Jonathan McCoy here to explain this or have a discussion about this. I'm sure you've gotten questions like that before.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. That's the reason we wanted to talk about it today, right?
Take it away.
Yeah. So Doug's, some of the ingredients that you just, in the conversation you just have with Doug are a great segue into this conversation of what is my number, right? We get a lot of people that are asking, what do I need to retire? Is it that million? Is it $1.5 million, $2 million? I mean, you read national articles and it's like, you know, nationwide average. I think a recent report was 1.24 million. So if you're sitting there at age 65 and you only got $500,000 in your 401k, you might be thinking,
I'm way behind.
or I'm going to work till I'm 90 or whatever it may be, right?
But that's not true, right?
No, not exactly. And it's kind of interesting. So I wanted to talk about this topic going back several days, but just yesterday I had a meeting, last meeting of the day really hit home with this topic on, you know, they're concerned with the fact that they really scrimped to save as much as they could for retirement. And now the husband in this situation, he's being run over by work, and he, you know, there's been massive corporate level change that has had a dramatic negative impact on his lifestyle at work. And he said, you know, if I can't retire soon, I might just stroke out, and there was no sense in saving for retirement to begin with.
That's not a plan.
And it's not a very
great plan.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing to hear in our meetings and our consultations, right? Because now you've got to look at threading the needle between, you know, we as helpers, as advisors, we want to try to make, you know, help people attain their goals, and they felt like the husband and wife felt like they were way behind the 8 ball in terms of total retirement savings. But when we started looking at combined Social Security benefits, the ability and willingness for both of them to actually continue working even part-time, in addition to pension resources on top of the 401k and retirement savings that they had in place, we started to build that picture of, you know, this isn't just a matter of you got to have $1 million on paper. It's throughout the rest of their lives, they actually had millions of dollars of resources in terms of income production that they weren't really fully realizing. And I think that reiterates having to go through this Core 4 process with us is digging into the details of your specific strategy. Now, the wife walked out of the appointment saying, you know, I'm encouraged, but I'm also still a little discouraged because this feels like it puts me back in the position like we were when we were raising 8 kids at home, and that there's just not going to be enough wiggle room. And, you know, one of the expectations we set is as we move forward through our Core 4 process, the next step is to actually sit down and look at recommendations, but also talking in more specific detail with our tax team on how much of this income is actually going to wind up in their bank so that she can have a more accurate idea as sort of the accountant of the household of how much of that income is going to be replaced based on how she's been running their budget pretty tight, but running their budget for 20, 25 plus years. Sometimes it's just that peace of mind that a lot of folks need to get to that point to pull the trigger on retirement.
Sometimes people need to be told they're okay because they don't know. That's not maybe their job. Maybe they were a teacher. Maybe they were a pastor. Who knows what they were doing, but they weren't a financial advisor. They weren't helping people with their retirement. And I'm sure having that conversation with you, like you said, it's not totally wiped away any concerns, but it probably makes them feel a little bit more in the know of what's going on in their situation.
Yeah, exactly. And these conversations that bring up a lot of important concerns around her thought was, you know, my husband's been in kind of this stressful job. What happens if something happens to him even after retirement? How much of this income is going to be there to sustain me? So they'd had, you know, some life insurance policies and things in place to help replace income if one of them passed away, but they've still got a mortgage. You know, they've got the risk of things like long-term care expenses. If one of them passes away, now who's going to be there to take care of the surviving spouse? Those are some bigger picture issues that it can't, all of these problems cannot be resolved in one meeting, right? And for some of our clients, we're addressing the long-term care conversation as we go, but in terms of implementing it into their retirement plan, these are things that need to be discussed alongside how are you positioning and investing and how much risk reward are you putting in place in your investments? Well, one of those risks is it's not just talking about stock market losses or raised taxes down the road, but one of those risks are those long-term healthcare costs as well. I use the analogy a lot of, sort of like a tornado warning. It helps to know which direction the tornado is coming from so you can put as many protective barriers between you and it as possible. Well, these financial tornadoes can come from a lot of different directions, and we've got to look at all of them.
Well said. Now, I'm curious, just like we've talked about in our classes, were they all in pre-tax? Did they have any tax-free? No, tax-free?
No, so all tax deferred, and then pension and Social Security.
And when we say pre-tax, that's those IRAs, 401ks.
Yeah.
It's essentially the money that's not been taxed.
Yeah, exactly.
And someone's going to pay the taxes on it.
And that gets, you bring that up for a reason. This gets directly to the point that I think the wife needs a little bit more help with in terms of knowing how much of this money is actually ours, because they're used to getting what they get from a paycheck, right?
Sure.
You've got deductions, you got 401k contributions, you have health insurance, you have taxes.
Social Security, all the taxes on that crap.
Everything. And their issue was not being able to fully realize when we flip that switch off on work and paycheck, how do we flip the switch smoothly and build that bridge of income, knowing that we're going to have that income that we need to meet today's bills in retirement. And, yesterday's conversation was just a great start down that road, I think, for them in understanding, okay, we might not be all the way there and being fully confident, but much closer than they were maybe 3 or 4 months ago when the husband's saying, I might just quit.
And that's not good.
Yeah, you can't just jump off with no plan, right?
Well, it makes it more complicated, I'll say it that way.
We'll have to clean up after the fact. And you and I have been through some of those situations before with folks.
Well, yeah, you got a guy that says, well, I turned 65, I'm retiring today. It's like, oh, okay, well, have you looked at your Social Security benefit? No. Mm-hmm. How much are you going to need to run your household? I don't know, but I'm 65, I'm retiring.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can work with that and sometimes we can't.
Most people are a little more cautious.
It helps to be that way and have a plan, and kind of as you're on final approach here, dare I use an airplane analogy, but as you're on final approach here, or we call it the red zone of retirement, those 5 years before and 5 years after, they're really critical because you can make a lot of mistakes there if you're not looking at this holistically,
right,
with the taxes, estate planning, Medicare, healthcare, and of course the investments. But and I'll talk about a lot of times in the classes, I feel like the retirement system in America is broken because if they need answers on all those questions, they got to go to 3 or 4 different people, and they don't know this language. They don't know what to ask.
Mm-hmm. And a big point is, we've learned to rely on that team, right? It's not that every single piece has to go in all at once, because then it might take you months and months and months and months to get a plan in place, and you'll never retire, right?
That is true.
It's, I've had so many folks that have gotten to the point where we know the income is sustained. They can go ahead and pull the trigger on retirement. And then we dive more in depth into the estate planning, the long-term care risks, and some of those other issues that we may have years and years and years before some of these things need to actually be put into action. But it's just like retirement. You spent years saving and planning. You can also spend some extra time in the planning in those other areas.
So you guys, if you're listening to this out there and you have a lot of questions about your retirement, or maybe just on some uncertainty, reach out and schedule a 15-minute chat with us by phone, and you can do that by calling 833-44, the word CORE, C-O-R-E, 4, or you can hop on over to our website at retirementhelp.com. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with Kimberly Sixkiller right after this break. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement. And like I was mentioned in the first part of the show, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And one of the questions I'll get a lot of times when I'm working with new people, or maybe even my existing clients that I've had for years, sometimes they'll come in and say, well, Matt, we had this term policy and we've got a couple more years on it, but we don't know why we have it because the house is paid off. The kids are already out of school. They're doing their own thing. Do we need to keep this life insurance? And to me, it really boils down to more than just a simple yes or no. It's part of a conversation. But just like we have tax advisors, just like we have estate planning attorneys, we have a professional in an office with us that helps us with life insurance questions and long-term care issues. And we got Kimberly Sixkiller. You ever get that question of, do I need this policy? Should I just stop paying it?
All the time. Yep.
And I'll warn people when that question comes up. I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you to stop paying for your life insurance, because as soon as we do, you're
Yes.
going to kick over.
Kind of that Murphy's Law.
Yeah, I was going to say Murphy's Law, but there are oftentimes, like I was mentioning earlier, there's more to it than just, should I stop this? Because it could be convertible. Maybe they have health issues that they didn't have when they took out the policy, but they have now. So they can't maybe get new insurance. So this might be the only insurance they'll ever have. And you can sometimes not have the full. There's so many different options here. Tell me about an example when you've come across that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with life insurance, I think it's interesting because you learn typically from an early age, people talk about life insurance when you're getting your first job, when you're first starting out, and it's more expensive the older you get to purchase life insurance. So people get it when they're younger, and around the ages of about 40, they're starting to evolve in their family lives. And like you said, they come in with this policy. They've had maybe 20 years, 25 years. It's got a couple years left. And they say, hey, should I keep paying this or get rid of it? And it's important to really evaluate because so many policies have, like you said, a cash value behind them, right? You have the ability to maybe repurpose it into something that makes more sense. Or maybe you find out that you don't necessarily need $500,000 in coverage anymore because your kids are out of school. You're no longer worried about how do I replace the income of one household member if something happens.
Now, maybe there could be a scenario where, well, let's call them Bill and Stephanie. Maybe you have a husband and wife come in, and maybe Social Security is the only thing they're going to have in retirement. It happens. And if they're looking at you saying, well, we're going to be on a fixed income now, should we just drop this policy? Well, what's going to happen if one of you passes away? You're going to lose one of those Social Security checks. Maybe you shouldn't rush to not paying for that life insurance or dropping it, because if someone passes away, that could be a huge income blow to their household if they're relying on that Social Security check.
Agreed. We always say that when you're looking at your life insurance policy, you really need to evaluate, ironically, your life, right? Like,
How about that?
You need to sit here and decide if something were to happen tomorrow, what's the debt that I have? How much do I owe on my house? Are there any large debts, cars, credit card bills, different things that we need to pay off? But then also take into account, what if life happens to me as far as long-term care, right? And so life insurance isn't just hey, someone passes away and now
Death
someone
benefit.
else gets a death benefit, right? Now there's a lot of hybrid features that can be added into them that say, all right, well, I can benefit from this money while I'm still living to help make sure that I can afford things. And if I have some kind of legacy planning that I want to do, I have someone I want to be able to leave money to, now I can utilize those funds to maybe look at an estate plan and help with protecting assets from Uncle Sam, spend a little less on tax, do a little more of that planning.
And you were working with a couple yesterday with Danny, right? And they were having some long-term care questions. Or maybe tell me about what was going on in that story.
Yep, so we'll call them Bill and Stephanie.
I'm going to say, let's use them Bill and Stephanie, because
Bill
that's
and
not their
Stephanie.
name. I know who you're
Yes.
done, but
Yeah, so Bill and Stephanie, actually, his mom is in a long-term care home. And so they are very much experiencing firsthand what can happen when you don't have enough assets to be able to cover those home needs.
Medicaid spend down.
Medicaid spend down, and so specifically they were in a situation where they said, we don't ever want to be here. We want to make sure that we're covered. And if something happens to one of us, the other one can have the best care possible, but the other person can continue to live in our home and continue with our lives as we kind of have set it up. And so we looked at a plan that would allow them to have a life insurance in place if something were to happen, but also gives them a set amount each month for long-term care purposes. Now, the great thing about the policies that they selected are they don't have to go into a nursing home or into some kind of confinement to utilize them. They can qualify through the activities of daily living. Those are those 6 reasons that long-term care can be used. And they can actually pay a nurse to come into the home, stay in their home, and kind of continue life at the new status quo.
Well, I mean, let's face it. If you can stay in your own home, that's going to be more preferred than going to a facility, and you're used to your surroundings. You're used to that routine, maybe, of waking up there and doing your thing, maybe with your spouse, or maybe you don't have your spouse still. But if people need care, I would imagine most people are trying to get it in their home, not at a facility.
Yes, it's such a turn from where it used to be 10 years ago. Statistically, people want to get it in their home. They want to be at home. Their grandkids know their home. Their kids know their home. Statistically, people live longer because they're happier in their home. They're comfortable. There's someone coming in that they know has that dedicated want to make sure that they are healthy and thriving. And so it just works to everyone's advantage to stay in your home if you can.
Well, if I have Medicaid questions, I probably go to Eidelman Law Firm, right? So then we're probably going to talk with Doug Schauter after this break about Medicaid and some things there. I'm sure you guys rely on him over there at Mag Life.
We tag in every day. Yes, we're back and forth. But yes, Medicaid, they are the pros on kind of deciding what needs to happen there.
And guys, if you don't have a team that can help you navigate all these issues wherever you're at in retirement, reach out and schedule a 15-minute chat with us by phone. You can do that by calling 833-44-CORE4. That number again is 833-442-6734, or you can hop on over to our website at retirementhelp.com. Again, speaking of Medicaid, we're going to bring in Doug Schauter. It's different Doug than we were talking earlier. That was Doug Miller, and he's going to be talking about Medicaid. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour. We've got a rare treat. We got the Kansas City crew down to Wichita, recording in the studio here, and we've got one of our estate planning attorneys with Eidelman Law Firm, Doug Schauter, and you wanted to talk about the Medicaid nursing home donut hole. I mean, I remember Medicare had a donut hole for prescriptions, but Medicaid nursing home donut hole. Tell me what's that?
It's not an official donut hole, which there was with Medicare a few years back. There was a specific number where if you had expenses for your prescriptions that were more than a certain dollar amount and less than another dollar amount, that you had to pay the gap in the middle. Well, with Medicaid, there's kind of an asset level donut hole, which is not a precise number. I mean, on the low end with Medicaid, it's a pretty low number for an individual. Mm-hmm. Their assets, if they're less than $2,000, they qualify for Medicaid, and with a couple, it's about $150,000. So if your assets are less than that, then you're going to qualify for Medicaid. You're going to get that benefit, and you have your assets that you have will be protected for that. And on the higher end, when folks have a certain amount of assets, and that's the number that's a little bit more flexible, but there are folks who have their income is high enough, if their assets are high enough, they're probably not going to qualify for Medicaid because they have enough resources that they're going to be able to pay for, if they need skilled nursing home or like you were talking about, ideally if they are able to stay in their home and pay the expenses for that. But if they have enough resources, they're going to pay for that amount, whatever it is, and Medicaid's probably not going to come into the equation. But the rest of us are kind of in the middle there, where we're likely to have to pay for a good portion of our nursing home care or our skilled care, and then that's going to dwindle our resources down and limit what a person can pass on to their heirs or to whoever they would want to benefit from what they've gained over the years,
or what they've worked so hard and sacrificed for their entire life. I was talking with someone this week in our office. They were using ChatGPT to ask Medicaid spend down questions, and one of the things I was like, and he told me this, I'm like, AI, it's not perfect. It's not perfect yet. I mean, maybe it will be one day. But he was asking ChatGPT, did they count? So his wife's needing some care potentially, but she has some retirement account dollars. He has some retirement account dollars, and they also have a joint account. In Kansas, they treat it a little differently than Missouri, right?
Yeah, there are different rules with different states. So if you're in Kansas, there's one rule. If you're in Missouri, there's a different rule. If you're in Arizona, there's potentially a different rule there. So yeah, it varies state by state because each state administers their Medicaid program.
And, I don't know if you've been following the news or anything, but we're spending $2 trillion a year more than we're taking in as a federal government. So they're looking for places to cut.
Well, that's certainly a concern. Is right now the rules to qualify for Medicaid are already fairly restrictive. The asset tests are such that if a person is trying to protect their assets, there's what's known as a 5-year look-back rule, and that rule was 2 years about a decade or a decade and a half ago.
Yeah.
And that now has changed, and it's a longer time period. Well, as the government is looking to see where they can save money, they're going to look to see, well, how can we spend less on Medicaid? They're already doing that. The big, beautiful bill actually had a lot of cuts to Medicaid programming. So there are a lot of folks that are already having to now pay out of pocket where they maybe would have been able to rely on government benefits before. So I think that they're going to look at it. They're probably already looking at, frankly, the amount of money that gets spent for nursing home care, because that's a sizable portion of Medicaid's budget. And I think that there are probably more cuts and more changes coming.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I was teaching an estate planning class in Andover, Kansas this last weekend. Someone comes up to me after the class, and I've told him about this 5-year look-back period, and I think he was there with his mom, because the gal was maybe in her mid-80s, maybe even older than that, but he was, looked like 50s, 60s. And he was asking me, can my mom just deed me the house right now? And I'm like, I'd come in and talk to an attorney. This is really screwy, but I don't think it works that way. Because, again, if you deed this house over and she needs nursing home care and she doesn't have any assets, that might not pass, right?
So what happens is that creates a period where she would be ineligible for benefits if she made a transfer like that. So if she made that transfer today and needed a nursing home tomorrow, they would look at what's the value of that house, and until you spend that much money,
on
you
your care,
you don't qualify. So she would be, even if she didn't have any other resources, she would not qualify for Medicaid until, and I'm just going to use a round number here. Say the cost of the home was $300,000.
Okay.
If the cost of the nursing home care is $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year,
that's a cheap nursing home.
Unfortunately, a lot of the Medicaid qualifying nursing home cares are less expensive, which may or may not be a good thing depending on the nursing home. But the skilled nursing facility, I think, is the term they prefer. But it would certainly that would be 5 years where she would not qualify for that, which, is something they'd have to figure out how to pay that. So the son may have to sell the house and pay for the care anyway. There's just a number of things that come into it. But yeah, it's something where you need somebody who understands the rules to be able to help you through those kind of things.
Well said. And do you guys that are listening or maybe watching this show, do you have someone that understands the rules? Or are you going to make a misstep that's going to hurt you or a family member in the not too distant future? And if you can't answer confidently that question, reach out and schedule a 15-minute call with us. It's that first step in our process just to see what's going on there. And you can do that by calling 833-44-CORE4. Or that number again is 833-442-6734. And you can always find us over there at retirementhelp.com. Well, stay tuned. We're going to round out the show at the end of this break, after this break, with Joshua Sikora, lead tax advisor with Market Tax Services. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on all things retirement, not just the investments, not just the estate plan, not just the healthcare ramifications, but also you're the tax man. Yeah, you're the tax man. Yeah, no? That's my best Beatles, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's stick to your...
Don't quit my day job.
Yeah, stick to your day job.
So you got more to talk about One Big Beautiful Bill?
It's just a continuation of the same theme we've kind of talked about. A lot of people we talk to, they're just are looking at it as, well, the Trump income taxes are just continuing on like they were before, and I didn't do anything before, so why would I do anything now? Or, it worked out fine for me previously, so let's just, let the good times roll. And what people don't ever think about and don't really dig into is the fact that, all right, so it's worked out great for the last, 7 years for you?
Yeah.
Are you the same person you were 7 years ago?
No.
Is your place in life the same as it was 7 years ago?
No.
No, I mean, especially the people we talk to, they're all moving towards retirement, right? And so, all right, so you were working during those years and things were clicking along, and that's fine. It worked out great for you. But now don't look at it as this is just going to go on forever. Look at it as you have a opportunity for the next 4 years to do intentional things.
Now that is well said. I was talking in our tax class last week in Kansas City. I said, what I'm wanting to do for the people I help is I want to make sure they can maximize. If they're over the 65, they get this extra bonus deduction. I keep tripping over calling it different things every time, but that stacks on top of the other standard deduction.
Yeah.
And it could help some people maybe roll some more money into their Roth out of their IRAs. But how do you know if you don't get tax planning?
You don't. And then you might get a bigger refund or whatever, but wouldn't you have rather versus you either get a few more dollars in your pocket, which are really your own dollars back, or you could start growing a pot of money that is forever free of taxes.
Under current tax law.
Under current tax law.
I was going to say, you don't say forever very often.
I don't. There's an alignment of motives on that one that would make it really tough for them to change it.
Well, and there's so much more money in the pre-tax, the IRAs, the 401ks.
Yep.
The Roth is like, oh, that's cute. We're not going to go after that.
Right. It's far easier to take more tax money out of those pre-tax accounts, the traditional IRAs, the 401ks. All they got to do is crank up the dial on the tax rates, and boom, they're taking more money out of everybody. Whereas on the Roth, they got to pass a completely new tax law, and they don't quite have the appetite to do something like that.
Well, I mean, even if they did, I've long speculated that they'll be like a pre-TEFRA date and post-TEFRA kind of thing where, oh, did you do it before when the rules, we want to honor that, but going forward, it's not going to be this.
Yep.
But a lot of people don't understand that just like they want investment diversification, they don't want everything in one stock. You also want tax diversification. And the example I gave at my class last week is we help a couple that they had $1 million all in pre-tax, but they had some opportunities over 3 or 4 years where they could fill up the rest of their 12% tax bracket, move some over to Roth. And then now they have some in Roth. I think it's only like $200,000. And actually, ironically enough, their millions it's not 800,000 now. And now it's grown to $1 million. So now they're at 1.2 million, not just this, but it helps with diversification. Because if you're right there on that tax cliff, whether it's IRMA, a next tax bracket, taxes on your Social Security, it's good to have that tax-free bucket there.
That's right. Or with the new senior deduction we've been talking about, there is a threshold where that deduction starts to go away and based on your adjusted gross income. If you had a pot of Roth money that you could tap into to make sure that you kept all that deduction, might that be an interesting solution?
Yeah.
But it takes planning to get there, and it takes planning to recognize when that is going to become a problem before it's too late. You could go $5,000 over that threshold, have your senior deduction get reduced, but you'd only find out about that when you file your tax return. If you had found out 2 months ago, when it was still the previous calendar year, you could have changed where you were taking your money, but once the calendar year closes out, that's the end of the story.
Now, all these things you're describing to me are, let me see if I can regurgitate this and get it back. You're saying you need tax planning to figure out how you maximize these things for your situation. And most people don't get tax planning. We talked about this with one of our advisors at the beginning of the show, Doug Miller. He's working with a couple that they have a tax preparer, and that person's been recording the history. It's not many levers to pull. But because you guys do tax planning before the end of the year, you practice doing someone's tax return before the close of the tax year.
That's right. Because as you know, when we actually do file the return, we compare it to that plan. One, to make sure that the next plan we do is more accurate, but then also just as a point of pride to see how close we got. But it's closing that circle each time that gets that better accuracy, and then lets you see how the plan is benefiting you.
Now, you are our tax guru. Not the only one, but you are the top tax guru. You are going to be hosting a live webinar here soon?
Yeah, kind of crazy. Last time groundbreaking tax legislation came out, we were just figuring out how to get this all put together to work out for.
I still use my Sony camcorder, and we didn't have the technology.
No, we didn't have all the technology and the things. So with this new tax legislation, we decided, hey, let's do a Facebook Live event and talk to people about what's changing, as well as taking some questions. Now, I mean, we can't get into really nitty-gritty personalized questions, but there are questions that are at a high level that everybody's going to have, and we're going to address some of those live on Facebook on Monday, September 8th.
Oh, okay. Well, cool.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Monday, September 8th, week after Labor Day.
That's right.
So this tax planning, you're getting ready to come in here, and I don't know if you've looked at your calendar.
It's
I've
full.
looked at mine.
I just did. It's full.
Full. I hope you have no plans for the fourth quarter of this year.
Hang out with you.
Oh, well, that's great. But if you guys are listening out there, thinking about this and hearing, well, how am I going to maximize this one big, beautiful bill for my situation? If you don't have the answers to that, or maybe you don't have some clarity, reach out and give us a call at 833-44-CORE4. And you can schedule that 15-minute introductory call with us just to see if you really could benefit from going through the full-blown process, or maybe you just have some questions and maybe trying to understand some things and you're not really sure what to do. That's, again, why we schedule that 15-minute introductory call. That's step one of our process. We'd love to have that conversation with you by phone. I had 2 or 3 last week. I think they listen to the radio show. That's how they're hearing it. But we also do the TV show, the classes. Big on education.
On and on and on. Yep.
Well, that's all the time we have this week. We'll catch you next week on Retire Hour.
Investment advisory services are duly offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor, and Market Investment Group LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The investment advisor representatives of Market are also affiliated with and registered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, and may provide services on behalf of both firms to client or prospective clients where properly licensed or exempt. This show is presented by Market Investment Group LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor that only conducts business in jurisdictions where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean that the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. The firm is not engaged in the practice of law or accounting. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the show's publication and are subject to change. The information presented is not an offer to buy or sell or a solicitation of any offer to buy or sell any of the securities discussed. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Any legal or tax information provided in this show is general in nature. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Annuity and life insurance guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. If you withdraw money from or surrender your contract within a certain time after investing, the insurance company may assess a surrender charge. Withdrawals may be subject to tax penalties and income taxes. Persons selling annuities and other insurance products receive compensation for these transactions. These commissions are separate and distinct from fees charged for advisory services. Insurance products also contain additional fees and expenses. Social Security rules and regulations are subject to change at any time. Always consult with your local Social Security office before acting upon any information provided herein. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. This is not endorsed by the U.S. government or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all your options. All client or prospective client names have been changed to protect the identities of the individuals discussed. All rights reserved.